Hello everybody, my name is Scott Chacon. I'm the CEO of Get Butler, and I also happen to be a certified wine expert. And today on Bits and Booze, it's pretty cold here, actually. I think I'm gonna go somewhere else for this. That's so much better. All right, today on Bits and Booze, we're gonna be talking to Dani Sassoli about code review with Gerrit. Let's go. I have with me here today Dani, Sassoli.
Sassoli, is all right.
Sassoli.
You can
Dani
stop at
Sassoli. And we're going to be talking about Gerrit.
There we are. Gerrit
And if you don't know what Gerrit is, it is a awesome commit-based review system that has been around forever. So a little bit of background, actually.
I was going to ask you.
I actually don't know. I don't know if you know this about me. Actually, when I first joined GitHub in 2008, Sean Pierce asked me to come and train the Android team on repo and Gerrit.
It just was Git.
It was just Git.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of just very basic sort of Git training.
Yeah.
But Sean came in and was like, okay, we have this new thing called Gerrit that we're trying to get the Android team to use. And that was a very long time ago, but like Android still uses it. All of the companies that use Android still use Gerrit.
Chromium is another big one.
Chromium, a lot of large projects, a lot of large Google projects. I think the thing that's very interesting is that it is a very different review system from GitHub, which is what a lot of people use, or GitLab, which is very kind of similar to the way that GitHub does stuff. And so today, I thought it would be really interesting to talk about what is Gerrit, why is Gerrit cool, how is Gerrit different than GitHub. But before we get into that, you're here for the bits. The bits is Gerrit, the booze is you're Italian.
Of course.
You
from Florence, specifically.
Are from the Florence area, very close outside of Florence. And so I got a couple of Chiantis.
Of course.
Which is a region in the Florentine area.
Yeah.
Usually I tell the story about the wine. I'd love you to tell the story about the wine. I have this Borgo Scoppetto.
Yes.
So why don't you show it to the camera and tell us a story and how far it is from your house.
Okay, so Borgo Scoppetto, which I clearly know and I had to Google to see where the heck it was, is only a 15-hour walk from where I actually live, or a 1-hour drive for those that...
15-hour walk is a pretty good walk.
Sounds good, right? The rooster, essentially, Florence and Siena, so I was telling you this earlier, but in Italy, your worst enemy is the guy on the hill next to you, right? And then bring it up to a nation, it scales to the whole of Italy, like cities hate each other.
Everybody's racist to everybody in Italy.
Exactly. And at that time, it was Florence versus Siena, Guelfi versus Ghibellini. They were in a big war for many, many decades, I'm going to say. And they wanted to essentially decide where the line of the city was going to be. I guess they agreed that when the rooster was going to sing in the morning, one horse was going to set off from Florence and one horse was going to set off from Siena. And wherever they met, that was going to be the line of the towns, right? So Siena picked a white rooster and treated it really well, gave it loads of food, whatever, and hoping that the next morning it would treat them well, while the Florentines got a black rooster and treated it really badly. Didn't give it any food, made it really starving, put it in a bad case or whatever. So the morning of the day that they had agreed came, and the rooster, the white rooster from Siena, was very happy with his life, so had no reason to wake up, and so only woke up and sung way after sunrise, while the Florentine one was all upset because they had treated him so badly, that woke up way before sunrise, sung. At that point, the horse rider from Florence could start, and so had a massive head start on Siena, and so the Florence ended up getting loads more territory because of the rooster.
To this day.
This day.
And that's why you live there.
Yeah, I guess. Yes, actually, yes, you're right.
I don't use a wine key in a normal way. I just go straight through the cap.
That's not going to work.
This is not how you're supposed to do it, but this is how we do it on this show.
Okay, fair enough. Cheers. Thank you.
Let's take a look at how Gerrit works.
Yes. So I assume when you did the training for Google, it was probably, definitely still Gerrit 2, which...
Yeah, 2009.
Yeah.
Maybe Gerrit earlier than that.
Yeah, so, I mean, the UI has changed massively. Not that it's amazing now, but it's definitely improved from what it was. And the other big change, which we might touch on to later, is that we don't have an external database anymore, but We can get into that later. So yeah, I've set up a repository. So this is GerritHub, which is a free Gerrit server that you can use. We host it at Gerrit Forge. It's actually like we don't have a way of monetizing this, so this is like completely free. There isn't a paid tier or anything.
So just as a side thing, because I did do this for testing out the GitBuilder integrations with Gerrit. You essentially can download like a WAR file.
Yeah.
WAR?
WAR file. Yeah.
How do you pronounce that? WAR?
WAR.
A WAR file.
I don't know. I'm Italian.
And host it yourself relatively easily.
Yes.
Like it's all Java. It's in the Java world, right?
And I might show it afterwards.
Let's say you have a Gerrit instance running.
Yeah.
From GerritHub, from your WAR file, from whatever. What do you get? Like what starts? What do you have when you start up the server?
So when you start a server, you get this essentially. So you get 2 repositories. Are we going to see them here? Let's see. If you start you don't see it here, but if you start a new Gerrit server, you get 2 repositories, an old projects and an old users repository, because as I mentioned, there's no external database. So all of the settings are stored in Git, and there's 2 repositories that track the old project's configuration and all the users that might have logged in or that are registered on your system. I'm not an admin of GerritHub, so I don't see the old users. I can guarantee you it's there. I see the old projects.
All right, so let's say I start working at your company, right?
Yeah.
And I'm being onboarded into some new project. Like, what does the project look like that I'm cloning, that I'm starting to create a branch and start, adding some work to? Or
so
whatever?
let's say you've got a project here,
right?
And so this is what it looks like when you open a project. Now, you said you started to you tried to run Gerrit yourself, and you couldn't find the clone buttons.
It is not the easiest thing to do.
Did you see this? Because this, for example, everything in Gerrit is a plugin. So Gerrit itself is very, very stripped down of. It's down to the essentials. There's really nothing. There's nothing else that you don't really need. So for example, you can see the browse button here is grayed out. So actually by itself, Gerrit doesn't even have a way of making you browse the repository.
Right. It's interesting because I've been running Git servers for a long time with GitHub, with GitBuilder, like setting up like even personal stuff. It's kind of a pain in the ass to run a Git server, right? Like to actually set up something with like Nginx or with Apache or whatever to like, run the scripts to do the smart HTTP or to do like an SSH server that, authenticates your users and like all this stuff. Gerrit is actually fairly easy, right? Like it's kind of just a Java command that's like run this WAR file and now you have a Git server. It's actually kind of fascinating. But so the user interface is very different. It's not GitHub focused, right? Of this way of like, okay, here's a repository, here's your clone URL, here's like the files that are sort of there. It's really focused around the changes. Like here's the changes that we want to sort of integrate, right?
And you can see that the view changes.
Right. Okay, so show us what this looks like. Like,
well, hold on, before we get to that. No, all right, view changes. There's no changes.
All right, so let's make a change. So what is actually GitBuilder demo? Did you clone the GitBuilder repository, or is this a different project?
Cool. No, this is an empty repo.
Okay,
completely. I've just created a GitBuilder demo.
Well, that's fun, but
so we've got 2 clone URLs here. We've got 2 clones URLs here, and these links don't appear if you don't install a plugin for it, but we can discuss that later. So why have we got 2? So this one is with the commit message hook, and we'll see in a second why it's useful. And this one is without. Now we want to create changes, so we need to download the one with the commit message hook.
To be fair, if you're using GitBuilder, you don't have to do this.
You don't need to do that.
But, okay.
Thank you very much. As you've figured out, it's a very generic script. There's nothing specific to the repository. We've run the command, just pasted it. There we go. It's going to tell me that it already exists. Fine. So we go inside GitBuilder demo.
What do we get?
We've got a README file, so we can open it. Demo repository, whatever. Not very interesting. Have you got a dad joke that you want to insert?
Oh, like this is a really nerd one.
Do you want to give it to me? Do this. Give me the first line. I'll commit it, and then we can put a comment with the punch.
Okay, that's a great one. All right. Julius Caesar walks into a bar.
Walks into a bar. So, all right, I'm committing this.
And asks for a martinum.
Martinum. All right. Now I'm hooked. Cool. So we've got our, if we do a git status, we've changed stuff. So I'm just gonna do a git add readme. Scott's first joke on Gerrit.
Yeah.
Right, so I've committed it. Nothing weird so far.
Right.
The issue is I'm not gonna be, if I do git push on this, well, I've actually got permissions, so it would work, but it wouldn't create a change.
Sure.
We haven't created a branch. We're not gonna create a PR or anything like that. What I'm gonna do is git push origin head refs for main.
So you're on main and you're saying, I have a new change on the whatever branch. It actually doesn't even matter what branch.
It really doesn't.
Right? And you're saying, I want this to go to main at some point. So this is the target branch that I'm going for, right? And so what Gerrit will do, presumably, is say, you could have 5 commits, right, on this branch. It doesn't really matter. And say, whatever's not on main, that's on the branch I'm pushing to right now, I will send those all up as changes that want to be integrated.
Yes.
All right, so let's do this and see what it does. And I find this really interesting because normally what you do is you set some tracking branch, right, in Git, and you'd say, I mean, now you're committing on main locally, which is weird, right? Because if you're used to the GitHub sort of workflow, that's not what you do. You create a branch and then you push the same branch on the server and you kind of keep that up to date or whatever. But here you're committing directly to the main branch and saying, this is a thing I want to get into main at some point.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
So, but it's interesting because if you're working with GitHub or GitLab or whatever, you create the branch, but the branch, you only need to do that to satisfy whatever tool you're using, because your intention is always to merge that change, whatever you're committing, onto main or whatever you branch.
Git doesn't really have this idea of this is a target branch or this is the way, like the thing I want to get it into at some point, right? This is what's coming off of it and I'm doing some stuff and I want to get it integrated back into this thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Git Builder has this idea, but also Gerrit has this idea of like, of actually more specific, I guess, like refs for, you could do refs for anything you want it to be a target for.
And refs for is the magic bit here. That's the only bit that is like Gerrit specific. So when you push this to the server will like decode that and say, this is for like the branch and create the change for us. So interestingly now, if you push on some other tool, you'll be prompted to like go and create a PR. You then need to go to the UI, create a PR, put a PR description, give it a target branch. It will assume master or main, but you need to do all of that in the UI. While here, it's already done that. So if I go here, use system browser, it's already created, this is the change.
Right.
And this exists.
So my joke's here, I have my change here.
Yes.
Now we can start doing a review.
Yes.
I can send this URL out to people.
Yes.
I don't have to go to GitHub and start a PR based on the branch, right?
No,
like
it's done.
Yeah.
This is your change, right?
Right.
Now,
and so actually tell me for 1 second, I know this is like, you know, I'm coming from a GitHub background. There's this change ID that's in the thing. Where did that come from?
So we didn't look at this, we should have, but when I did my commit, okay, if I now do a git log locally, we can see that my change has this change ID. So you remember that we cloned using a clone command that had a commit message hook in it. So when you commit, it will automatically add the change ID for you if it doesn't exist.
Can you show the hook just like...
You know what? You've looked at that hook more than I have looked at it.
I have, actually. There is actually, if you're using Gerrit, there is a thing where they will give you an SCP command that doesn't work, right, by default, unless you do like a -0
if you're setting it up from zero from scratch,
so you have to be a little bit careful. But there is all of Gerrit, a lot of the Gerrit thing relies on here's a change ID. So this is similar to, we have other episodes on Jiu-Jitsu. There's some links for Jiu-Jitsu. I don't even know if we put things in here. I want to do it.
You work for everyone. You work for Jiu-Jitsu. You work for GitLab.
But there's a difference between a commit and a change, right?
Yes.
And like the change can be sort of mutated, and be different commits, but be different versions of one commit. And Gerrit really follows this, where you can mutate a commit and have it be a different version of commit, which we'll get to in a second. But this really relies on saying in the footer of the commit message, and hopefully someday in the header that's hidden, but like that's a different thing. that there is a change ID that is kept across all versions of this thing. And so the way that they do it is having this hook that says, before you create the commit, throw this trailer in there that says, here's the change ID. And so this is the sort of shell script that does it. And all of this is kind of dumb, except that it essentially just creates this change ID trailer, right?
That's what it does.
But it has to be there, because if you're trying to use Gerrit and you don't have this hook, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work. Well, and not only has to be there, it has to be there in the footer. So if I remove, and you know better than me, let's do a Git commit amend actually. You know better than me that a commit message has a structure, right? So you've got your title, you've got your description, you've got your footers. So if I remove this white space here, the script is not going to detect a footer with change ID, and it's going to add a different one. I don't know if you want to say that. But anyway, so it needs to be in the footer. That's pretty much it. Cool. Shall we go back to our change?
Yes. Sorry. It's an interesting thing to know, right?
Yeah.
Like
it's important
that there is this idea of this is a change ID. I can mutate this commit as much as I want. This is the ID that matters, right?
You can get a completely different commit and replace the change ID, and it will think it's this change and push it here. Yes.
Okay, so now we have our first version. We're saying, okay, we want to like incorporate this change. And we look at the README, and the joke doesn't make any sense because there's no punchline.
There's no punchline.
And so let's actually we had this operation here today where we were all trying to figure out how to make a comment.
Exactly. Yes. Why don't you leave a comment? Shall we leave a comment?
It's right here. Here's us trying to figure out how to make a comment in Gerrit. Let's do it right now. Let's make a comment saying there's no punchline.
So it's extremely similar. You highlight what you want to comment on, and you press the letter C.
Of course! Oh, it was the letter C the whole time.
For comment. It's really clear.
Comment.
I don't know. So sorry. Now the screen.
It's so dumb.
I had to reduce, but this is so stupid. But as soon as you highlight something, it comes up. I don't know what you guys were thinking. Like, this is obvious.
Press C to comment.
There we go.
So dumb.
So what's well, actually, we could suggest an edit. What shall we suggest an edit?
No, let's not suggest an edit.
Okay.
I want to say, hey, this has no punchline.
Hey, no punchline here.
No. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So now...
Be funny.
Yeah, come on. Make us laugh.
So now I click save. You might think I've actually published this comment, right? But no, at the minute, and there's a reason for this, which we'll get to. At the minute, this is only a draft, and it's only visible to me.
Right.
So, to be honest, this is a bit similar to how you do it in GitHub. You can have
you can have a bunch of comments
and then you publish them
submit
once,
the
right?
thing, yeah.
And then, so you see here, reply 1. So now once I click on send, now that's not a draft anymore.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, tell me.
No, I was going to, if you can go, can you go back to that thing? Okay, so tell me just for 1 second, because I find this actually pretty interesting, this votes thing, the code review verified. You can change these. You can have a bunch of different like sort of requirements, whatever your organization wants. But like, tell me by default, kind of what does this mean?
So
plus
if you
1,
install,
plus 2, minus 1. What is minus 2?
If you get a minus 2, it's bad news.
That's fucking horrible. You that sounds like it's real bad.
If you're gonna get plus 2, that's not good news.
How many minus 2s have you had?
I think 1. Yeah,
you must. You're like, fuck you, minus 2.
Yeah, minus 2. So okay, to explain it in layman terms, minus 2 is over my dead body. This is not getting merged.
That's a go fuck yourself.
But yeah, going back to what you get by default, you actually only get the code review label. And then all of these labels and the scores, you could configure a minus 3 if you want.
But you can, I think in the what, config?
Project config, yeah.
In the project config say, here's 40 different things that we want all these votes or whatever, and this is the minimum that it needs to pass or whatever. And it's just saying, like CI can have its own route or whatever. And then at the end, it's like, okay, I need a minimum of these things in order to say this is submittable, right? And I can merge this.
It's called submit requirements. It works exactly as you're explaining it. It's a very cool feature, actually. It's extremely customizable. And actually, you can even have it so that some people can give only plus 1, and some people are allowed to give plus 2 if you wanted to.
Cool people.
The cool people. If you go, and actually you can even have it so that, for example, it checks if you have trailers in the commit message. So say that Gerrit itself,
or
Gerrit itself, Gerrit send off, or Gerrit itself requires a release notes footer. So if you don't put a release note, then it won't let you merge it, essentially.
All right.
So yeah, I can give it a +2 if I want, because I'm the admin. It's my own thing, so whatever.
God, I want you to give it a
why
-2
not?
so bad. Okay, but yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, so minus. So okay,
All right.
minus
No,
two is
no.
okay.
Let's not do it. I don't want to. I don't want to have bad mojo.
Well,
of
actually,
-2
-1.
somewhere.
So this change should be a -1 because there's no punchline, right? So what am I
you're
giving
right.
myself?
You're right. It should be a -1.
Exactly.
Is
It's
it
red.
darker
Oh,
red?
-2 is
It is a little darker red.
What's the description? Do not submit. It's pretty clear.
Go
right?
fuck you. This is amazing. The difference between a -1 and -2. I would prefer you didn't submit this, and a number 2 is do
not submit.
Submit this.
This is configurable. This is like
You have to assume it is, but it's
you can write whatever you want here.
It's an amazing difference. Okay, so verified is negative.
Okay, -1. Come on, let's not be too harsh and make.
No, it's definitely a -2 because it has no punchline. All right, so
You're right.
All right, fair enough.
So
all
now
right,
I'm going -2.
no punchline. We have a real problem.
Yes, we do.
All right, so how do we fix this?